Hello, my name's Bob from Stour Valley Systems, and what I'm going to show you today is how to replace this old dirty lump with this, a modern flat screen TFT LCD display. Huge difference you'll see in size, construction and quality. So what I'll be doing is taking you through the process of replacing the old Heidenhain BC120 CRT cathode ray tube display with this modern TFT replacement. So safety first. Before you start working on the machine, you should power down the controller and the complete machine and isolate the circuit breaker. Then on the back of the machine you'll need to get to the access panel, which gives you access to the rear of the actual display itself, the old monitor. On the rear of the display you should see four connections. You have the main AC power connection here, which is just your standard kettle type socket, so remove that. That will be reused, so don't throw it away. We have the video connection, or the video lead, which is this cream coloured lead here. You need to follow the end of that until you see the other end of the connector here. And that is connected to another cable inside the machine. Disconnect that cable and make sure you retain and keep safe the other end of that cable. So that's the video connection, and then we have this connector here, which is the lead that goes off to the controller and plugs into the controller for controlling the keyboard that is on the front of the monitor. So just unscrew these two screws here and then remove this cable. We will be reusing this end of the cable. The other end stays connected to inside the machine. So with the screws loosened, it's just a simple case of pulling out the connector. So like I said, retain that, we'll be reusing it. And then the last connection, you'll see somewhere on the back they will be an earth wire, usually attached to one of these screws that screw in the back panel. So remove that earth wire and again retain. We'll be reusing that on the new LCD monitor. Now using a 5mm hex tool, we need to remove these two retaining nuts which hold that connector in place there. So just unscrew the two hex nuts. And you'll see the cable is then loose. When we remove the display, we'll be reusing this cable. This goes from here to the keyboard on the front of the front panel, which we will be reusing too. Back to the front of the unit, we now need to remove the 4 bolts that are holding the monitor to the front of the machine. Remove those and then you'll be able to slide the monitor out from the machine, feeding the cables as you pull it out. So put the monitor onto a bench, and then what we're going to be doing is removing this front panel from the old CRT. There are 2 screws on this side which need to remove, and 3 screws on the other side which need to be removed. And here are the 3 screws on the other side. There's usually one here, and perhaps one here. So remove those 5 screws and then we can withdraw this front panel. So with the screws on the sides removed, we can now withdraw the front panel. Just raise it off the bench slightly and slowly pull it forward, lift at the bottom, and then the front panel will come away. So what we have here with the panel drop down, you'll see 2 connections. The connection for the keyboard, which was the cable that or connector we removed on the back of the unit. This is going to be withdrawn and reused. And then this connector here, which is this actually goes to the on-screen display controls, which are these bottom 4 controls here. They will not be on the new panel because the new LCD display has an on-screen display with its own menu, and there's no need for these controls. So this cable will just be removed by just pushing in that little lever there and removing it, and then withdraw this cable from the back of the unit. The keyboard connector just simply pulls out of this socket, and then we can remove the display and feed this cable out from inside of the old monitor. As you're removing the keyboard cable, sometimes the connector will get stuck under or to the side of the old CRT printed circuit board in there. So just put a non-metallic stick down there to unjam it. You just need to lift it slightly above the PCB and then it will come out. Best not to go poking around with a metallic screwdriver in there. The old CRTs, the capacitors on them do retain some charge, so just to be safe, use a wooden stick to go inside and unfree that connector. So that's the connector itself, and we'll be reusing that on the old keyboard, which we're going to fit to the new front panel. So with the old display put to one side now, that will not be reused. We can now work on removing the keyboard from the old front panel, and that is by these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 screws. So with the screws removed, we can now lift off the PCB, and underneath you'll see the rubber pads, and in the slots are the keys which we will remove and put onto the new display. Whilst this is off, it's a good idea to clean this off, get rid of any grease and grime and stuff that's on the rubber panel there. So just to make sure we don't mix up where all the keys went, the way I usually do it is to put the panel on the bench, then remove the keys and just line them up where they originally went on the old monitor. And that's all the keys removed, lined up with their original positions, ready to reinstall in the new front panel. Right, here we have the new replacement display on the bench ready to reinstall the keyboard. Just whilst we're here, on the back you will see the power connector, the original kettle connector, your earth stud, and the video cable connection. So obviously all we need to do now is just put the buttons back into the original place and then mount the old board on top of those keys. So here we have the keys back in place, and we're ready to remount the PCB. And it is important to get this round the right way. And the way to tell is the lettering here will be in the correct vertical position and not upside down like this. If you do put the board in upside down, what you'll find is these outer keys will not work, because the keys at the bottom here actually have no switch behind them at all. So if you did manage to fit it upside down like this, you'll find those upper keys not working. So if that happens when you power it all up, you know you've probably put that round the wrong way. It's easily done, but it won't cause any damage. Just take it back off and refit it again. So that's the correct way to put it in. Mount it back onto the board. You'll feel it sort of just clip into place down there, and then secure with the 8 screws. When securing it, torque it down gently, just like you were torquing down the head on a new engine when you do renew your head gasket, if you've ever done that. So just gradually work your way across, increasing the tension on the screws. Don't over tighten it, but it needs to be gently firm so that these switches are making proper contact on the other side. So here we have the unit, the keyboard actually screwed down in place, nice and secure. It's worth just quickly checking the operation of the switches. You can do that by the feel of those switches. Just by pressing them, you should hear a little click as you press each of the buttons. Just work your way across, listening for that click. If any of them feel soft, or you don't hear the click, then you may not have torqued down the screws properly, or if these, like I said earlier, if these two or these two are soft, then you've probably inverted the PCB on the back and you need to flip it back over. The 4 buttons here, although they click, they will not actually be making any changes to the screen now. They were the old buttons used for the on-screen adjustment of the old CRT, and with a modern LCD, once you've set it up via the on-screen adjustment switches at the back, there'll be no need to use these, and in fact they're redundant. So last things to do are to make the final connections on the back here. We need to put back the keyboard connector that we removed earlier. So this will go back into here. It's keyed. I don't know if you can see that. So it's keyed, so it can only go in one way. That fits on there. There'll be no connectors going into any of these. Then you remount it into your machine, connect the video connector. We actually supply a new replacement video lead, in case for any reason the one in your existing system is damaged or dirty or whatever. So you can use a new cable, video cable. You plug in the kettle connector, the power connector, and reattach the earth wire that we'd removed back onto the earth stud here. And then the last thing to do is to find the other end of the keyboard connector that should still be in the machine. If you remember right back at the beginning, this connector was the one that we removed from the rear left hand side of the monitor. That is the connector that was connected inside of the old CRT, and what we need to do is just connect those two back together again. And the other end of this should still be plugged into the controller inside your system. If it's not, that needs to be reconnected, otherwise your keyboard will not work. Once it's all installed, it's just a case of powering the machine up just like you would with your old display. The Tubis monitor will automatically find the signal from the controller and will power up without any adjustments. The display will come up, and you should see a nice bright crisp display. The only adjustments that you may need to make are the alignment of the screen against the soft button menus at the bottom of the screen. So on the on-screen display, pressing the mode button will bring up the on-screen display, and then you press the mode button to cycle through the various adjustments, like the horizontal shift, vertical shift, and the whole size of this display can be shrunk or expanded using the frequency setting on the modes. So cycle through here until you find the frequency, and then to make the screen larger you press the plus button, and to shrink the screen you press the minus button. If there's any adjustments needed, they'll be fairly minor. It's just to line up, like I said, the screen with the menu buttons to make sure it's all centered as well. And make sure you cycle through all the various pages on the display and make sure they all do line up. And that is it. That should be your monitor up and working and give you many more years of great pleasure. Hope you enjoyed this. If you want to give any feedback, drop me an email to bob@svsrepairs.co.uk. Thank you.